Leoric had ventured into many isolated corners of the world, but the dense wilderness of this uncharted island felt different, ancient, untamed, untouched by time. He wasn't here for riches or recognition. As an independent researcher, his work led him to places few dared to tread. But tonight, his mission no longer mattered, because someone was screaming. The raw, guttural cries tore through the humid air, sending a chill down his spine. They weren't entirely human, yet there was a distinct agony in them, a terror that made his blood run cold. He crouched low, pushing through the dense foliage with the silent precision of the predatory beasts he knew prowled these lands. Ahead, flickering firelight danced between the trees, casting eerie shadows against towering trunks. The pungent scent of burning would mix with something else, something acrid, curling in his nostrils. Then he saw them. A group of towering, tribal-looking extraterrestrials had gathered around a colossal bonfire in the clearing. Their forms were lean and sinewy, adorned with bone jewelry, dark feathers, and dried clay markings that glistened under flames. Their faces were elongated, almost reptilian, with piercing black eyes that reflected the firelight. They gripped long, sharpened spears, their movements synchronized as they chanted in guttural tones. Leoric's stomach clenched when he saw what hung above the flames. It was a girl, not human, but close. She dangled from thick, woven vines, her delicate wrists bound tightly, her body limp as the heat licked at her skin. Her pale, moonlight-colored hair cascaded over her face, concealing her expression, but he could see the faint tremors in her breathing. She was alive. His heartbeat pounded against his ribs. He had never encountered an extraterrestrial up close before, but there was no mistaking it. Her form was too refined, her features too perfect to be of this world. Smooth, luminous skin bore faint bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly as if reacting to the heat. She wore a tattered bodysuit, now singed and frayed, exposing glimpses of her slender frame. She was going to die. The realization struck him like a hammer. Whatever these beings were, they intended to sacrifice her. The chants rose in intensity, voices swelling into a feverish crescendo. One of them, seemingly the leader, lifted a jagged blade above his head, its edge catching the firelight. Leoric's grip tightened around his machete. No time to hesitate. With a sharp inhale, he pulled a smoke grenade from his belt. He had packed it for protection against predators, but now it was war. In one swift motion, he hurled the grenade into the fire. It detonated in a thick, suffocating cloud of gray smoke, billowing outward in chaotic waves. The tribesmen shrieked, their chants dissolving into frantic cries as they staggered back, coughing and snarling. Leoric was already moving, dashing forward. He slashed through the vines, suspending the girl. She collapsed into his arms, her body feverish and trembling. Up close, her ethereal beauty was even more striking. Her bioluminescent markings flickered weakly, her lips parting in a soft, pained gasp. "Can you hear me?" he whispered urgently. Her eyelids fluttered briefly. Then her gaze met his, deep violet eyes unlike anything he had ever seen. The sheer desperation in them tightened something deep inside him. The moment shattered as a guttural roar erupted behind him. The smoke was thinning. The tribal leader had recovered, his obsidian eyes burning with fury. He barked an order in a foreign tongue, and the warriors lunged, spears raised. Damn it! Leoric hoisted the girl onto his back and ran. His boots pounded against the damp jungle floor as he sprinted into the undergrowth. The alien girl was light, but the heat radiating from her skin felt like carrying a dying ember. Behind him, furious roars filled the night. The tribesmen were in pursuit, their heavy footfalls crashing through the foliage. A spear whizzed past his head, embedding itself into a tree with a dull thud. Too close. Leoric ducked low, adjusting his grip on the girl. "Stay with me," he muttered, unsure she was conscious enough to hear. Ahead, a narrow ravine sliced through the jungle. A bridge, nothing more than rotting wooden planks strung together by vines, stretched across the gap. It didn't look stable, but there was no choice. With a final burst of speed, he leaped onto the bridge. The planks groaned ominously beneath his weight. Not good. The warriors reached the edge just as he made it halfway across. Their leader bellowed an order, and two of them lunged forward. Leoric didn't hesitate. He pulled his machete free and hacked at the nearest vine. The bridge shuddered. The warriors froze. Another swing. The vine snapped. The section behind him collapsed into the void, taking the first warrior with it. A shriek echoed as the alien plummeted into darkness. Leoric didn't stop. He reached the other side just as the bridge gave way completely, severing the only path between him and his pursuers. For a moment, silence. The warriors fumed on the other side, their reptilian eyes blazing with rage. The leader let out a deep, guttural growl, a promise that this wasn't over. Leoric turned his back on them and kept moving. An hour later, deep within the jungle's heart, he found a small cave nestled between towering rock formations. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He laid the girl down gently, finally able to take a proper look at her in the dim glow of his flashlight. She was undeniably alien, delicate features, shimmering skin pulsing with faint bioluminescent patterns, hair that glowed subtly even in the darkness. And yet, she was breathtakingly beautiful. He reached for his canteen, pouring a few drops of water onto her lips. "Come on, drink." Her lips parted slightly, and a faint, breathy sigh escaped her. Then, finally, her eyes fluttered open. Leoric tensed. Violet, her gaze locked onto his, wide and filled with something raw, fear, confusion, but also recognition. She parted her lips, struggling to form words. Her voice was soft, melodic, but weak. "Who, man?" Leoric's breath caught. She knew what he was. "How do you know my species?" he asked carefully. Her brow knitted together as she tried to sit up. She winced, clutching her side. The feverish heat had faded, but she was still dangerously weak. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Easy. You're safe now." She swallowed hard, eyes still locked onto his. Then, with almost desperate urgency, she grasped his wrist with trembling fingers. "My name," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Eighth." Her touch sent a strange jolt through him, not fear, but something deeper, something unfamiliar. Leoric exhaled slowly. "I'm Leoric." Eighth's lips parted, as if testing the name in her mind. Then her fingers tightened around his wrist. "Thank you, Leoric." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried weight, a promise, and something else. Something that made Leoric realize this was only the beginning.